Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, once again, this 2016 presidential election cycle is bringing out some of the worst aspects of the American system of polity. Of course, for those of you who have been loyal passengers and longtime listeners, you would know that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been warning about this for well over a year now. You see, Trump has so many skeletons in his closet, you might as well say that he has a cemetery within it, and it's got to be a bigly walk-in closet for all of those skeletons. But what has come to the forefront here and is causing all sorts of political turmoil is that he went on to a film program, a news program type thing that was having access to his cameo appearance on, let's see what the actual name of that soap opera was. It was for a program called Access to Hollywood, and it was a segment about Trump's upcoming cameo in Days of Our Lives. You know, that's one of those little stupid soap operas that's been on the air for one decade too many, or as many decades as too many as it has been on the air. But anyway, what happened there is there was allegedly on the bus ride to the set a hot mic, and Trump was just unaware of the fact that there was this hot mic. And so he was engaging in what he came forth and proclaimed was mere locker talk about what he would like to do with women that he wanted to bed. And of course, this was just around the time, back in 2005, that he had married Malaria Trumpolini, his current wife. And so what this shows is that marital infidelity is just a quintessential part of who he is. It's an aspect of what he does. Recall that he cheated on his first wife with his second wife, and then on his second wife with his third wife. And so there is this pattern, for lack of a better term, that has just been recurring over and over again ad nauseum with him. And what a lot of the current Trump supporters have been going forth and saying is, look, it's no worse than what Bill Clinton did. And I've got a problem with that. The problem that I have with that is, first of all, the Republicans are supposed to be above this. We've always taken the moral high road in the Republican Party. Think of what happened to Foley after he had that foot-rubbing incident in an airport bathroom. Think of how they go after people and make them leave the party or drop out whenever there's any type of moral dilemma or question with respect to their conduct and with respect to their character. And so now that we go forth and put Donald J. Trump at the head of our presidential ticket, there's a major problem there, because it's directly contrary and contradictory to everything that the Republican Party has stood for in the past. And he certainly does not espouse the same sort of political ideology or platform that the Republican Party has stood for since the Reagan Revolution, and therefore it's a compounding problem. It's got this snowball effect that just gets larger and larger with each passing day. And unfortunately, it just seems as though Trump doesn't want to do anything about securing this. And I think it's important that we actually take a moment to allow you to hear exactly what happened in that video. And do be warned, folks, there is a bit of vulgar language here. And so it's not necessarily family safe, but I'm going to go ahead and cue that up, and then we will discuss it in greater length and detail. So here we go.
And she's still very beautiful. I moved on her, actually. She was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and her. She was married.
Huge news there.
No, Nancy.
Yeah.
No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where there's some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch. But I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony and everything. She's totally changed her look. Yeah, that's her, with the gold. I gotta use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the do anything. Oh, hi.
Trump, how are
nice seeing you. Terrific.
Pleasure to meet you.
Terrific. Billy Bush?
How are you?
Nice to see you. How you doing, Ariane?
I mean, folks, you can't make that stuff up. That's exactly the sort of thing that we don't need. That's the sort of thing that plays into this disastrous notion, this made-up notion that the Democrats always run with, trying to say that we are basically engaging in this war on women, this mythical war on women that doesn't exist, and it's just nuts. It's bizarre. And it reminds me of how he went out and said that I could go out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any supporters. Is this literally the type of persona that we want to display with the Republican Party? Is this the type of image that we want to convey to the public, to say, look, we really are just as bad as the Democrats say? And that brings me back to this whole ridiculous notion of how the Lion Branch Trumpidians are emerging from their Trumpidian tabernacle and are trying to say, well, it's still better than Bill. So it's essentially gone from this argument that they've always made, dating back to the primary process of, yeah, but Trump. You can try and bring up any negatives with respect to Donald Trump, the New York vulgarian and billionaire, and they would always say, yeah, but Trump. Yeah, but Trump. And now that he has clinched the nomination and he's going forth with this fiasco, for lack of a better term, it's yeah, but Hillary, or in the case of his marital infidelities and his lewd, loose talking there, it's yeah, but Bill. Bill Clinton is not running for president. This is essentially moral relativism. This is exactly what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists use with that cancerous doctrine. And again, it should have no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. But unfortunately, we see that we are facing this, that we don't have a moral compass anymore, that we have ceded the moral high ground, and as a result, that comes back to haunt us each and every time. It shows that we are falling victim to hypocrisy, which can't be where we go. If we fall into the trap of hypocrisy, we will never be able to overcome the hurdles, obstacles, and adversities that are placed in our path, and it gives the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media the sort of ammunition that they need to lambast us and to pigeonhole us with these generalized stereotypes that the left always attempts to pigeonhole the right with. And it's so unfortunate that we find ourselves in this position, particularly when we are, about 30 days or 31 days away from the election. And it just can't be allowed to go forward. Because what happens when we fall into their trap, when we play it by their games, we lose each and every time. It's why I have warned on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that we can basically just fall to these traps. We cannot just stand for nothing, because then we fall for everything. That is the quintessential aspect and the shortcoming that's coming to haunt the Republican Party, particularly in this 2016 presidential election cycle. We all knew that Hillary Clinton would try and utilize this disgusting display to try and enhance herself. Remember that Obama was the one that made the most effective use of the race card during his first election attempt there in 2008. And now we're going to see the sexism card pulled. And why on earth would we have chosen this candidate whose entire purpose here is to basically just go out and be arrogant, bombastic, and just not caring about the things that matter? And so that nonchalant attitude of his, that approach of his, just falls directly into the trap that Hillary and the Democrats have set. And so the general public is going to look at this and say, why on earth would the Republican Party put up someone like this as their leader? Because when they clinch the nomination, they are the titular head of the political party until such time as they either win, in which they'll maintain it until the next election cycle, or until they lose, in which case a new leader is selected. And of course, that's what we have to keep in mind, that in politics, perception, more often than not, is more important than reality. And so it's going to hurt us not just at the top of the ticket, but it's going to make us vulnerable down ticket. I mean, we are in a difficult fight to try and maintain our majority control of the Senate, and there is a lot at stake with the House of Representatives as well. And what we shouldn't be doing, folks, is going out and essentially making it easier for the Democrats just to waltz in. We shouldn't be putting arrows in their quiver, so to speak, but that's what Trump has done. And with these skeletons that are in his closet that keep emerging over and over again to the point of being ad nauseum, it shows that we are exceptionally weak. But what it comes down to is, how can you support a man like this? How can anyone in good conscience come forth and support a man like that? A man who has essentially no qualms about going forth and saying these off the cuff, off the wall, insatiable statements that are just detrimental and damaging. And it's as though he doesn't think. It's as though he doesn't think before he speaks. And of course, that is the problem with him. And in this modern era of the twin cancerous doctrines of moral relativism and political correctness, we can't just be nonchalant like that. Yes, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have declared war on the twin cancerous ideologies of moral relativism and political correctness, but that doesn't mean that you go out to fight a war to lose it. But that's how Trump comes across. It's as though he goes out to fight and lose. And it's not that he even is that much of a stalwart warrior against the twin cancerous doctrines. It's more that he will implement it and utilize it for his own benefit. Recall that during the debate, when back during the primary process, when Ted Cruz had brought up that video that he had with Tim Russert, that interview that he had with the late Tim Russert on Meet the Press, back in 1999, I believe it was, in which he said that his values would not be the same as Iowa voters or New Hampshire voters, that he was applying New York values. Well, the first thing that Trump did was to fall back on a politically correct narrative, some sort of drivel that Ted Cruz was attacking New York during 9/11. I mean, that's the sort of asinine nonsense that just gets my blood boiling, just as I'm sure it gets the blood boiling of the vast majority of you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members. Why? Because it shows that he is approaching this in a Saul Alinsky-like tactic. Now, Saul Alinsky, for those who need a little bit of a refresher for him, was one of the lead activists for the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. He was the one that created their Bible, for lack of a better term, therein Rules for Radicals. And what he was doing with Rules for Radicals was setting down a template, if you will, to attack conservatives, to attack those who wish to adhere to the clear and concise language contained within our shared United States Constitution. So what he wanted is to be able to freeze a target and then to polarize that target and to make that target apply in broad fashion to anyone and everyone who was ideologically opposed to the Fabian cause. And of course, that's difficult of them, and it just shows that they have been working on this for well over a century and a half now, folks. And they have basically boiled this down to an art form, and we're playing catch up. And it's so tragic that Trump has gone forth in such a way as to almost seemingly deliberately walk into these traps. And of course, it does raise that nagging question that we've asked here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, before. Did he do this on purpose? And is he a plant for the Democrats and Hillary Clinton? And folks, I have to literally wonder. I think he has to be a plant. I think that he certainly wouldn't act in any different form than he has if he had been a plant for the Democrats, because he's just giving them practically everything. It's as though he has gone into this election cycle just in order to lose it. And that makes me irate. And let me explain a little bit of the reason why. It's because after the two disastrous terms of this Barack Hussein Obama regime, this should have been the election cycle in which conservatives got their act together and were able to easily win. And there are several factors behind that. First of all is that Hillary Clinton is the weakest Democratic nominee that the Democrat Party has put up in half a century. So 50 years they have not put up somebody as weak as Hillary. But it goes even deeper than that. It's that they want to be able to set the agenda for the next several decades. And they're going to be able to do that. With Trump at the helm, saying these sorts of stupid things that you can grab a woman by her and she'll just let you whenever you're a star. What is one of the things that we have said? Going back to the primary process of this disastrous fiasco of the 2016 presidential election cycle, it's that Trump is hardly different than Hillary Clinton in so much as he doesn't think that the rules apply to him. And this tape from Access to Hollywood from 2005, in which Billy Bush and Trump were engaging in this lewd and lascivious type of banter, it just falls into that. It shows on tape that he literally thinks that the rules don't apply. And that just cannot be allowed to go forth into fruition because, again, it's a proverbial gold mine for Hillary's people. You know, the ads practically write themselves, and that's the problem. I haven't seen Trump running any effective ads against Hillary Clinton. I haven't seen him going out there in robust fashion to try and win this thing. Logistically speaking, he's not doing it. From an organizational standpoint, he's not doing it. And so he's already approaching this from a downhill perspective, meaning he's going to have to fight an uphill battle. And we're basically just a month away from the time that voters go into the ballot box to make their decision. And this is what he's given us. Gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, and they are preventable. They are stupid. And sure, what the media is doing is wrong. Sure, we can say that. But this is a sort of vetting that the media should have been doing during the primary process before he had become the nominee for the Republican Party. But you see, they are trying to control the narrative. And the narrative that they're wanting to convey here is that, look, the Republicans are off balance. The Republicans have lost their mind. They have put this man up who, under any normal circumstances, would be considered a bigot, a vile, disgusting, chauvinistic bigot. And unfortunately, that's the sort of thing that's going to stick, particularly when you consider the way that the modern arena of American politics has boiled down to sound bites and, again, false perceptions. However, in this case, I can't say that it's a false perspective because it's on tape. He unabashedly said those things. He said those things without any semblance of remorse. And so that's out there. It's out there, and he hasn't taken the bite out of it. And yes, he did go forth and have that rather ludicrous taped apology, which I'll get to in the next segment, but it just exposes all of the major problems that we're encountering, and it shows that Bobby Jindal, the former governor of the state of Louisiana, was partially correct when he said that the gutless opposition party, or GOP, is the party of stupid. An intelligent party would rein in someone like Trump, or they would kick him to the curb. And in fact, now, some of the people that endorsed him, people like John Huntsman of Utah, who is a detente member of the gutless opposition party, they're now saying that for the good of the country, for the good of the nation, and particularly for the good of the party, which I think is the one that matters most to them, that Trump should drop out of the race. Well, what good is that going to do? Now it's going to leave the Republican Party in disarray. And of course, folks, this is exactly the sort of nightmare scenario that my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, and I have been warning about here on our state-of-the-art radio program over and over again. But of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians congregating there in their Trumpidian tabernacle simply do not care. They have just started suffering from acute ostrich syndrome, so they're stuffing their heads up their posterior as opposed to the sand and are refusing to listen to the truth. They're refusing to listen to the shortcomings of their fearless leader, and we see that it just unravels in this fashion. And so now, for the first time, it appears as though the Teflon coating of Donald Trump has started to wane. Again, something we said would happen. We knew, just as everyone should have known, that as soon as Trump clinched the nomination for the Republican Party, that the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media would turn on him. They always do that because they are wedded to their frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist, leftist, propagandistic agenda. And that is just to promote Fabianism. And in a way, that's exactly the same things that Donald Trump has promoted and advocated for the vast majority of the 70 years he has spent on God's green earth. These are the sorts of things that simply cannot be ignored. And so now, those who endorsed him, particularly those like Texas Senator Ted Cruz, they're coming out with egg on their face. Why? because this is the sort of lewd and lascivious sort of behavior that cannot, must not, and will not be tolerated. And so now it comes out looking like that he has tainted them, that there is this ugly mark on them. And so we have to be cognizant of the dangers here. And so I'm wondering what the damage control is going to be, because we're not sure exactly what the full extent of the damage from this is going to be, but I have a feeling it's going to be fairly substantial, because it just plays into that narrative of the left. And so now it's going to appear as though it's too little too late from those people who claim to once stand on principles, honors, and value. How can we be the party of value? How can we be the party of integrity when we allow someone like this to be our standard bearer? There's one, it's one thing to be opposed to the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism, but it's another thing to completely disregard social norms. It's a completely different thing to forget that Sam Adams called on we the people to be a virtuous republic, and to pick our nominees and candidates wisely, to make sure that they had a moral compass, to make sure that they were upstanding citizens. Well, I can't in good conscience or in good faith say that Donald Trump is an upstanding citizen. He is a scumbag. And if he wants to sue me for saying that, I can certainly plead truth as an absolute defense to any type of defamation lawsuit he might try and bring, because I am speaking the truth. Who here would want somebody to speak like that about their wives, their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, their aunts, their cousins? I know I wouldn't. Nobody who is of a good moral standing, of good moral character, is going to stand for that. Nobody who has a modicum of sense and a modicum of dependability and being decent would support that. But here we are. We are now caught in this catch-22 because the disillusioned conservatives danced to the tune of the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. And recall that what happened at the end of the story, or the legend of the Pied Piper. When the town refused to pay him for removing the rats, he took their children, their future. That's exactly what Trump is doing. He is saying, look, the political price that you're having to pay here, the political capital, as well as actual capital that I'm going to extract from you, is going to be too much for you to bear. But you've already committed to me, and so the sinful deed has been done. And so now, just now, the so-called evangelical leaders have come forth and have put forward a message saying that Trump is an unacceptable candidate and we cannot support him. Well, what about those evangelicals that had supported Trump bar none in the primary process? What about those evangelicals that had turned their backs on Ted Cruz and others? That just cannot be good, because it goes against all that we stand for, because it shows that we have allowed ourselves to be detached from those things that we have held as being part of our core, part of our standards. And that just plays against us each and every time. Each and every time we fall into this trap, and it gets worse, and it allows the left to paint this party as a party that doesn't stand for anything. And the reason they're able to get away with that, folks, is because When was the last time the gutless opposition party, or GOP, actually ever stood for anything? Well, it wasn't in 2008. It wasn't in 2012. It wasn't in the midterms of 2014. When was the last time that the GOP ever delivered on the slew of promises they've made? I think 1980 would have been the last time. But the last time that they actually led with conviction was back in the 20s under Calvin Coolidge. That means that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been able to successfully and incrementally push this nation further and further to the left, and thereby forcing us to buy into moral relativism and all of these other atrocious things. And we could have prevented this. That's the biggest tragedy. This was all preventable. You know, folks, one of the things that has been said with respect to Trump's entire thing that's been going down here is that, well, it really can't be like Clinton's because Clinton's were done in action, that he actually acted upon assaulting women and being lewd and lascivious. Well, that's the thing. Trump has actually been active on it. That's certainly what the interview that he had with shock jock Howard Stern would show. It's certainly what his pattern of behavior shows and his code of conduct has shown. And recall, again, I know that I said this in the previous segment, that he cheated on his first wife with his second wife and his second wife with his third wife. So we go from Ivana to Marla Maple and then from her to malaria. And so it shows that he just lacks any inhibition. He lacks any self-control. And again, what's one of the things that we have said with respect to the highest office in the land, as it has gone so far astray, as it has distanced itself so far from the limited constraints that were placed on it by the clear and concise language of Article 2, which lays out the duties, responsibilities, and obligations of the executive branch of government, but also the office of President of the United States, we see that one has to be able to be restrained. One has to be able to exercise good, sound judgment. And unfortunately, what that 2005 tape from Trump, which is just one aspect of a cornucopia of things that work against him, shows, is that he lacks control. He lacks that very sort of control that is necessary, that sort of quality and quantity of character that is necessary for a good and decent leader. And as I said all throughout the prior segment, it just plays into the narrative of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And recall that one of the things that the Lion Branch Trumpidians have said all throughout this disastrous 2016 presidential election cycle thus far is that they like Trump because he says things the way he means them, and that he is unapologetic for the things that he said, and that he's unwilling to go on the defensive. And therefore, they like this bulldog attack style of Trump. But really and literally, when you stop and think about it, it's not a very dignified sort of thing that Trump's doing. It's not the sort of image or message that we really want to associate with, because it is crass, it is vulgar. And in fact, today, just recently, before I even started this recording, it's come forth that Melania Trump came forth to the media and proclaimed that her husband's words were crass, vulgar, lewd, and that they were offensive to her, and that it doesn't represent the man she knows. Unfortunately, it is just one further step, one further indicator of exactly the type of man that he is. And it shows that he lacks any sort of a moral compass. And so we see that this just charade, for lack of a better term, is still just bubbling up to the surface. and it's going to grow political legs and feet. It is going to haunt not only Donald Trump, but the entire gutless opposition party, or GOP. And again, when these warnings go unheeded, it's almost poetic justice, except that when you stop and consider just how dire the consequences are with respect to the current state of affairs in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, it really does place us in a dangerous and precarious position. And when you see the apology that he gave to the mainstream media yesterday evening after all of this brouhaha bubbled up to the surface, it leaves you with an empty feeling, or at least it leaves me with an empty feeling in my stomach. Because we know that all of this was avoidable. We know that this is the sort of trap that can damage a political party's reputation, and not just a political party's reputation, but in the entire conservative movement's reputation for decades to come. Because the left is going to be able to sit there and say, just ridiculously, facetiously, see, the right said that they were all about standing up for values, that they represented the good nature of humanity, and it's just something that comes out as base hypocrisy. The right has fallen into the trap of hypocrisy, and it's as that old adage goes, that it takes a lifetime to build your respectable reputation, and you can lose it in an instant. And here we are, folks. We have lost it in an instant. We have gone forth and have supported this man, and it's going to be attributed even to those of us who could not, in good faith and in good conscience, support him. And so it leaves us here in a very bad place. And it just does not play out for us. Because when you stop and think about it, the narrative has always been controlled by the left. The left has always had a better grip on the information media sources and outlets. And so it means that we always have to fight twice as hard. And yes, it's unfair, but guess what? Life isn't fair. And so we have to react appropriately and prepare extensively enough for what we know is a pattern, for what we know is the truth, and that we can't avoid, so that it does not become a lingering problem, so that we can at least get beyond it. The problem is, I think Trump has pushed us so far back that it will be nigh impossible to overcome the subterfuge that's going to come out of this. It's going to be impossible to recover and restore our good reputation for years and decades even to come. And that's tragic. It's tragic because it is so stupid. It's so brazenly stupid. And I know it may seem crass for me to say it in that way, and sure, we ought to be about forgiveness, but that's the thing. Recall that Donald J. Trump has never once apologized to God or called for God's forgiveness. And he was saying this when he was allegedly professing his faith because he doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. Well, the 2005 tape certainly indicates to me that he did something wrong. And it certainly indicates to me that he lacks any moral fiber or a moral compass and backbone, and that he is hardly different than the very things that we complained about. I thought that one of the things that was a sticking point with respect to Bill Clinton back in the 90s was that we were going after him, not just for the perjury, but on the overarching thing, because we were a party that stood for something different, that we were a party that stood for wholesome, traditional American values. But it seems to me now that that has been stripped from us. And I don't know if the brand image can be recovered. Recall that Trump is all about branding image. I know that we have oftentimes reiterated this on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it bears significant truth here because he has built a brand image for himself, and now it's like he's waltzed into the Republican Party, taken the gutless opposition party's nomination for president of the United States of America, and is acting like a bull in a china shop and is just recklessly, wantonly, intentionally destroying that reputation. It's as though he's giddy about it. It's as though he just has no inclination about what people think or about what is socially acceptable or socially normable or normal, and it is so difficult to try and get things back onto a sane and rational path. That's the problem. Trump has not been about reason. He has not been about rationality. And the disillusioned conservatives that have fallen in behind him have done so out of a sense of raw emotionalism. And it's such a dangerous position to be whipped up into such a raw emotional frenzy because it leaves us highly susceptible to the twisted machinations of carnival barkers, con artists, snake oil salesmen, exactly what Trump is. And that's the other thing. It ties into the way that he's refused to pay contractors that he's hired on various real estate jobs and development jobs. It ties in to the way that he's abused the legal system, such as with eminent domain, to try and push that old lady out of her house in order to construct a limousine parking lot for one of his casinos. And by the way, the Trump name is now officially out of Atlantic City. So if he's such a great businessman, and if he hires the best people, and if he is so intelligent, why does he allow all of these gaffes to come forth? Why has he had more failed businesses than he has with successful businesses? And why is it that when his businesses failed, he always came out on top, but the real backbone of it, the real people that were trying and putting their life on the line, meaning their economic livelihood on the line, come out with the short end of the stick? It ties into that stupid narrative by Vermont Senator Nerdface Bernie Sanders that the entire system is rigged for the so-called 1%, of which Trump is unabashedly a part of. Because if you recall what he said at the time that he won the New Hampshire primary, it's, I'm greedy for America, I'm greedy for money, and we're all going to make money. Greed this, greed that. It's not who we are. And again, the United States of America cannot be run as a business. Why? Because our fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself, cannot be placed on the negotiating table or on the bargaining table. But that's always been Trump's big position, and Trump's big push was to place everything onto the bargaining table. Everything is negotiable. Well, I don't think good moral standing and good moral character is negotiable. And I damn sure don't think that our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are negotiable. And so, again, it just extenuates the problems that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and what true dyed-in-the-wool constitutional compositionists have with Donald Trump, that his positions are wholly incongruous and incompatible with those things that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But, everybody said that Trump is unapologetic and that was part of the reason why the Lion Branch Trumpidians, who have congregated over there in their Trumpidian tabernacle, have said that they will support him and just essentially are like the three monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. But here, his hand was forced. His hand was forced, and he was forced to go before the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and make an apology. And I've got the soundbite of this. And as I play this soundbite, I want you to reflect upon whether you think he is being truly sincere with his apology, or whether it's more like that sort of apology that John Edwards made. Sorry, I got caught. So here, we're going to go ahead and pull that up now, and then we'll delve a little bit deeper into it. So here we go.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them. Anyone who knows me knows these words don't reflect who I am. I said it, I was wrong, and I apologize. I've traveled the country talking about change for America, but my travels have also changed me. I've spent time with grieving mothers who've lost their children, laid off workers whose jobs have gone to other countries, and people from all walks of life who just want a better future. I have gotten to know the great people of our country, and I've been humbled by the faith they placed in me. I pledge to be a better man tomorrow and will never, ever let you down. Let's be honest, we're living in the real world. This is nothing more than a distraction from the important issues we're facing today. We're losing our jobs, we're less safe than we were 8 years ago, and Washington is totally broken. Hillary Clinton and her kind have run our country into the ground. I've said some foolish things, but there's a big difference between the words and actions of other people. Bill Clinton has actually abused women, and Hillary has bullied, attacked, shamed, and intimidated his victims. We will discuss this more in the coming days. See you at the debate on Sunday.
So there you have it, folks. There you have him saying that, well, you can't base it off of what I said because, again, I'm going to delve into some moral relativism here, and what Bill Clinton did was worse. And, I'm humbled. I'll be better tomorrow. I'm going to stop beating my wife, that sort of thing. Is it believable? I don't think so. Not when it's, yeah, what I did was wrong, and yeah, I admit it's wrong, but he did worse. Squirrel over there. Don't pay attention. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But let's think back to what our founding fathers said with respect to this. And that is that they said we had to be a knowledgeable, free, and virtuous republic. And that's something that has just been lacking, sorely lacking, with respect to what the founding fathers expected. And it was Sam Adams, again, who said that we had to have a virtuous republic. He said that the people, in order to support our society, had to go forth and say that without morals, a republic cannot subsist any length of time. And it's always that way. And it's something that just really does not coalesce with all that we have. And here's one thing that Sam Adams said that I think really does speak volumes about what is currently happening in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. It's something that we cannot take away. And it's just amazing to see this. And what he said is, if ye love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. That is powerful. It is very powerful. And it speaks volumes about what it is that we have lost sight of in this country. It shows that Trump falls into that type of category. And it just does not reflect who we are, either as a nation and as a people. And again, This is the sort of danger that we have to avoid. It is the sort of danger that we must pull back from. And they are wanting to now force the issue because it fits their narrative. It fits their narrative because they are the ones that want to be able to control. They want to leave conservatives in a weak spot. And it's as I have said before. True conservatives, those of us who wish to strictly adhere to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, have been left without a voice in this election cycle. We hold these things to be reprehensible. We understand that these sorts of things are not the sorts of things that represent us either as a nation or as a people, and the fact that we are having to come forth with this and that we are facing this sort of thing is just stupid. It's stupid because we should know better. Anyone with any modicum of sense, anyone with any modicum of rationality would understand that this sort of thing just is incongruous with what we stand for as a nation, and that we will not be ones to accept this sort of thing. Again, have others done worse things than Donald Trump has? Sure. But that's the thing. We're not supporting those other people. We are supporting Trump, supposedly, as a party, at least. And so that means that any type of moral high ground we've had is now completely eroded away. It means that we have bowed down to these nefarious forces, and it just allows the left to lambast us as they have been, because we no longer stand for anything. And when we no longer stand for anything, it leads us to a position where we'll fall for anything. But folks, we can ill afford that, particularly when you consider that the United States of America is currently in the grips of not only an identity crisis, but a slew of constitutional crises brought about, thanks due in no small part to the failed policy positions of this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime. And so what we needed is to have a candidate that was at least articulate enough and at least aware enough and of enough good moral fiber and standing that he or she could have said, look, this is not the nation, and it is not who we are. And of course, that is what Trump tried to do, but it's too little too late. It should have been that this was known about. This should have been parsed up during the primary process, and it should have been dealt with handily at that time. But the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, has shown that once again they are the party of stupid, that they are incapable, seemingly, or certainly unwilling, particularly under the tutelage of Reince and Repeatus, to literally stand up to this, to literally put forth something that works, something that is knowledgeable, something that can bring us back from the brink of ruination. And unfortunately, when this becomes the standard of the party, I don't think that we can very easily recover from this. And it certainly makes people like J.D. Rucker seem all the more logical in their approach of saying, we need a new party. If this party continues to embrace this path of stupidity and does not do the right thing in forcing this unelectable candidate out, then the party is dead. It's doomed. You might as well stick a fork in it. It's done. Just as the Trump train has already run off the tracks. It's already derailed, and now it's threatening to derail everything else, everything that we hold near and dear. And that just is insufferable. It's insufferable that we have allowed ourselves to be foisted down this path against our will, and it does not represent who we are or what we stand for. And it's just, gosh, it's so sickening. It's so sad that our nation and our party have allowed the charlatans to take over from within. And recall that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have not really ever liked Abraham Lincoln. But there is one thing he did say that I agree with, and that is this. If America is to fall, it will not be by some transatlantic giant coming to fell us by invasion. If death be our lot, it will be orchestrated by our own hands, and it will be the death of the nation by national suicide. And I think that that's true for the gutless opposition party or GOP. If death be their lot, they will be the arbiters of it, and they will have done it by self-inflicted suicide. I mean, how else could it be described? How else could we explain this? Because what it is showing is that we don't believe in anything, that we don't adhere to the very things that we have said are integral parts of who we are, that we are willing to abandon everything for what? A fleeting chance of victory? When every election cycle becomes a dire one, in which we claim that the life of the republic itself hangs in the balance, we are going to encounter these problems. And it just cannot be something we sweep aside. It cannot be something that we ignore. And unfortunately, that's what the Lion Branch Trumpidians have wanted to do all throughout this fiasco of a 2016 presidential election cycle. It's yeah, but Trump, and then yeah, but Hillary, and then yeah, but Bill, and yeah, but anybody except our fearless leader. Except that in this nation, part of the fundamental pillars that defines us both as a nation and as a people is the fact that we are willing to be self-accountable, that we are willing to be self-responsible. And those two aspects, working in tandem and in conjunction, allow us to be self-determinate. It's as though we don't want to be self-determinate anymore. It's as though we simply wish to bow down at the altar of the almighty state and to allow statism to take over because, you know, the other party did it, and therefore it should be good enough for us too. Why? Why is that the path that we take? Why is that the path that we set ourselves on? When that is not a path to victory, that is a path to destruction. And it's staggering. Staggering, shocking, sickening that this has become the lot of the party that once stood for the Constitution. And that's the thing, folks. The Constitution is the key. The Constitution is what drives us and defines us and brings us together. And it's shocking because we have essentially said in this election cycle that that doesn't matter, that that is not what we stand for anymore, that we don't care, that we're not moral and righteous people anymore, and that we're just going to allow these nefarious forces to come in and take over our nation, to redefine us. But we didn't submit to that. And those who are members of the Never Trump movement didn't subscribe to that. And though Mark Levin and the others in the alleged right-wing commensurate and punditry have tried to say, at least with Levin, that you can't hold him accountable or responsible for the stupid things that Trump says or that his surrogates say, well, I'm sorry. But that's exactly what the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media will do. They see this as the perfect opportunity to basically inflict a coup de grace on the conservative movement, and they will think they are fully justified in doing so. And in a way, they are. Because when you vote for someone or when you endorse someone, it means that you are supporting their stances, their positions. And unfortunately, how can we take anything Trump says seriously? And then that reminds me, during his ridiculous apology there, Trump said that those who know me know that this is not who I am. Well, who are you? We know that your now ousted campaign manager, Paul Manafort, had gone to the leadership during the primary process and vowed that the Trump that we saw giving those stumps thumping speeches was not the real Trump. We know that Dr. Ben, I'm a victim, rocket surgeon Carson, get me a new suit Carson, had said that there are two Trumps. Well, which Trump is it? Is it the Trump that was sitting there saying that you can grab a woman by her you know what and she'll just allow it if you're a star? Or is it a statesman? Unfortunately, there has not been enough done to differentiate or distinguish what he has done and who he is. There has been nothing to clarify what his positions are. And that plays to the great detriment to not only conservatives and the Republican Party, but for the Constitution and our nation in general. But folks, this is why we say you must foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because in so doing, you gain the ability to parse through this, to reject this sort of trumpery, meaning flashy or meaningless things, and act in your own best interests. You see, it's about empowerment, self-empowerment. That is what we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, wish to achieve for you. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, she's not going to grab you anywhere. She's just going to pour you some alcohol. As always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them either here at our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, our Blogspot account where we're putting up audio-only versions of our state-of-the-art radio program, and then you will find the Cafe Press account. Folks, go ahead and take a look at the Cafe Press account. There is so much there, and every purchase you make of those things with our traditional logo on it or our first-class passenger logo on it helps to fund this program. So go ahead and take a look at that and make a purchase. It'll give you all sorts of good things like drinking glasses, shot glasses, hats, clothing, apparel, watches, clocks, laptop bags, sleeves, tote bags, you name it. It's there at reasonable prices. And it's a good-looking design. And as we are starting to come up to the holiday season, these are great gift ideas too. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that in the description of today's program, so you can click the link there and take a look. Thank you again, folks. We will see you again next time. Do take care.